of the American language. And so I'm going to speak to you today under the aegis of another one of my credentials. I am a usage judge for the American Heritage Dictionary of the American Language. This means that I am one of the people who decides how are you going to use certain English words, also how to pronounce them. I think that is so funny because, because I'm going to come with my Chinese accent, and I'm going to tell you how to pronounce your English, and I'm also going to be responsible for how you use certain English words. But I think that a feature of the American Heritage Dictionary is that, you know, I am part of a panel of judges. I'm not the only one. And so we're just like the Supreme Court. We split decisions. So after certain words, you will see that 60% of the judges think you should pronounce it this way, and 48% say you should pronounce it this way. And maybe 30% say you should say almonds, and 30% say almonds, and 30% say almonds. And so you can find all of this in that dictionary. And so, it's been about a dozen years, I think, that I've been doing this work with the dictionary. And so that gave me the confidence to write a dictionary for my book, I Love a Broad Margin to My Life. And I thought, well, yeah, I can do this. I can, you know, what I have is a 225-page poem, and I realized that I am using words from about 10 different languages, but they're my normal way of thinking to myself. I use words from all different languages, and then one day, going over a early draft, my editor, her name is Deborah Garrison. She's a great feminist poet. And she said, why don't you write a glossary? And I thought, wow, what a great idea. Because if I define the words in a glossary, then I don't have to define them in the body of the poem. And I can be more concise, and I don't have to do any expository work. I don't even have to worry about making it make sense in context, because you can always look it up. And the fun thing about this glossary is that I can make up the meanings. I make up all the definitions. I can define it any way I want, because, don't forget, I'm an authority here. And so having the glossary, it changed the poetry in that it was even more concise and more direct. I got this title, I Love a Broad Margin to My Life, from Henry David Thoreau. This is a direct quote from Walden. And when he uses the word margin, I also can see another meaning for margin is the border. And it is also a national border. Thoreau was always thinking about, oh, I want some space between me and my neighbors. I want some space between me and everybody else. I think I'll move the Walden Pond so I can be all by myself. But he was also thinking about national borders. I'm going to read a section here where I quote Thoreau. I have such a good time quoting him because, you know, he's a prose writer. But in my, he seems so poetic to me. So I took his lines and I put them into poetic lines. And it just works so beautifully. Thoreau swam, then sat in the doorway of his shelter, large box, dwelling house, alone all the summer morning, wrapped in the sunlight and the trees and the stillness. Birds flitted through the house. Until, by the sun falling in at my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. So he's out there in the woods, and he's just really loving the quiet, so he can hear the birds. But he's sitting here in his sunny doorway, and then he hears music coming from town, from Concord. And the band is playing military music. My neighbors are going to war against Mexico. He made up his mind not to pay taxes. Okay, so even then, my neighbors, we are going to attack Mexico, and we invade Mexico, and we take a lot of land, and the consequences of that reverberates to this very day, and so the borders change. Here we have Thoreau telling his time there, and the consequence. Oh, I just want to. I mean, he really is a role model of mine. Notice that he builds this little house in the woods, and he didn't have a word for it. He didn't name it. It's not called a hut. He didn't name it a hut. He didn't call it a cabin. He called it a large box, and he called it a dwelling house and a shelter. And so after this fire that Donna told you about, we started rebuilding, and I thought, I want a little house just like the Rose. And so we turned our garage, the spot that a garage should have been, I put a house. But I thought, I'm going to name mine, and I call it a casita. And so there I have a casita, and I get to use a real Spanish Mexican word. And of course, this is just right because I'm in California on that land that was taken from Mexico. So of course, I got to call it a casita. Okay, so then we have the national borders, which we are closing now as tightly as we can. But we cannot stop even if we can stop migrations of people, we cannot close the borders of language. And so this English language just keeps changing. I want to read to you a section that reflects my Chinese ancestry and in a way, in my Hawaiian ancestry too. We lived in Hawaii for 17 years, but also my great-grandfathers, they were in Hawaii. So there is, in my own life, the Chinese influence and the Hawaiian influence. Okay, so my time in Hawaii, I never learned the hula. Oh, I say this with regret because as a writer, as a language user, I didn't know this until we got to Hawaii, but language especially the written language, it does not go deep in Hawaii. The way that people communicate, it's music and dance. And so right away I'm out of it. My time in Hawaii, I never learned the hula, never learned the language, couldn't bear the music, heard at evening the music, mele and pila ho okani would stay with me all the night and into the next day. It hurt my chest filled with tears. Words for the feeling are regret. Mina mina. Hun, said my mother, hun, the sound of want. Hun, hun the nation, lost. Hun the land, hun the beloved, loving people. They're dancing, feasting, talking story, singing hello, goodbye. No sooner hello than goodbye. Trees, fronds wave, ocean waves, the time-blowing wind, smells of flower and volcano. So in my glossary, I have English words. Talk story is one of the words that I have in the glossary. In Hawaii, everybody says talk story, very common, and made use of that in the woman warrior, which is, it's a direct translation from what the Chinese say, we talk story. In the glossary, I also put aloha. Notice here I say singing hello, goodbye. You know, a lot of people think that aloha means hello and goodbye, but it doesn't really. That's not what it really means. It's I mean, people will say it on the occasion of hello and goodbye, but it really doesn't mean that. It means some kind of a feeling that you have. It's a feeling of love, of a good feeling, that feeling you get when you meet the beloved, and then that sad feeling you get when you know you're going to part. And often it's the same feeling, because you know, you see a loved one, someone who's precious to you. You're so glad to see them, but at the same time you're so sad because we are going to part. We are going to part. We're going to die. We're going to say goodbye, and you don't know whether you'll see that person again. And so, so that kind of feeling is what happens when we say aloha. And actually people say aloha kakao, which means 3 or more. You know, this love for 3 or more. And it means even more than that. Love including me. You know, it's not just say I love you, but we're going to talk about a love which includes you, but it also includes the speaker. Whoever says it embraces all of us, including myself. And I don't know that we have an English word that says, I love you, plural, including me. I love the way synchronicities happen across languages and cultures, and such as hun in Chinese, but then hunger in English. And I wonder whether these sounds come from our human body, and this is the groan or the moan that we make when we have these universal human feelings. There are linguists who will tell us that even if you get 70 words in common between two cultures, that is not good enough evidence that those cultures ever were connected. But I don't quite like that, because I mean, we are connected in that we have the same body and throat that the sounds are coming out of. I love hola, because that, you know, meeting Mexican friends, you can say hola, and Chinese, hola means very, very good, and you can say that on all kinds of occasions. And I first came across hola and loved that word reading Wonder Woman comic books. Oh my